If you're trying to patch those hard SharePoint columns like choice columns, multi-choice columns, lookups, managed metadata, images, etc., then this is a video for you. What we're going to do is we're going to use the patch function, and we're going to do them two different ways. One, using controls, kind of easy, and then two, with the static value, we're going to shape the data, kind of hard. Sounding fun? But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with Power Apps 911. Those guys. And today we're going to talk about how to use Power Apps to patch SharePoint columns that are complex, right? So the choice, the multi-choice, the lookup, the managed metadata, all of them, right? They're probably on the screen right now. And so we're going to go through each one. We're going to talk about how to patch it two different ways. One is using its controls. And so using controls is a lot more straightforward because the control does a lot of the shaping for you. And then we're going to talk about how to patch them all with static values, because there we're going to have to create our own records and tables and images and that type of stuff. So two different ways to do it. Now remember, if you want to jump to how to patch a specific column, Shane, I'm just watching the video for blah. Great. Look below, right? We have the little chapters, and there'll be two entries for every chapter. One patching its value from a control and one from a static thing, right? So try to make this easier for you guys to jump around. Hopefully you watch the whole thing, but if not, that's all right. Jump to the spot you need. Okay, that's enough of the blah, blah, blah. Let's switch over to my desktop and take a look. Okay, so probably the first thing we should do is switch over to the SharePoint list and take a look at that. So over here, I built a SharePoint list, and if we just go into our list settings, and we'll scroll down a little bit here, and you can see all the different columns. And so this is one of those lists I think everyone should make, especially if you're struggling with this, right? I basically built a list with all the different column types I wanted, and I made the name super obvious, right? My choice column, my multiple choice column. And then I would just go in and configure each one to be what it was, right? The idea there is that now I'll have this list forever. So if I'm ever like stuck and I'm like, how would I do this on this column? Then I've got it here. And by using really obnoxious names like this, I can never get confused, right? Like you might have been tempted to take the image column and name it image. But then inside your Power App, you'd be like, well, is that the image control? Is that an image? Is that the image column? Like you would cause yourself grief. So I just went with simple name columns here that I can't confuse with anything else. I made all of these, okay? So there they all are. We're going to now go over and let's patch all these. So back here in the app, you're going to see that I've made a screen full of controls, right? We're not using forms. Forms does most of this for you. And forms are sometimes a good way to steal ideas of how one of these columns works. But for what we're going to do here is I've added all these individual controls. And so you can see that like for my title, it's just a text column. So it's just a regular text input right down here. And I named it input title to make it easier for me in my patch statement. Text column, same thing, input text. Number column, remember number columns and currency columns, they're the same as far as Power Apps is concerned, right? Power Apps is just going to send a number back and forth. It is not going to do anything with the currency. It's not worried about the currency symbols, any of that. So both of those are just number columns. Date columns sends a simple date back and forth, right? And so here we're just using a date picker. So then we get into our first complex column, right? It's the choice column. It's where everyone starts. So when you're going to patch a choice column using a control, most likely what you're going to use is a dropdown control, and you're going to set the items property to choices and then your list name, right? My list being called complex columns, dot your column name. This will return all the choices from our SharePoint list. And so you can see that in SharePoint I have red, green, blue, and so Power Apps pulls that in from SharePoint directly. So that's what we're going to pull into the dropdown. And so then we go to patch it. Let's click on our patch button here. What we're going to see is that we're going to see that we've got my choice column. And so choice columns, they store the data as a record. It is a record with the column of value and then the choice, right? So the text red, blue, or green in this case. So when you patch that back to SharePoint, what it wants is it wants that record. Dropdown choice.selected is that record. You don't have to do anything, right? Hit the dropdown here, and then you can see that it's currently value red. Now, don't make the mistake, like if you wanted to see red, right? So if you're using this on a label, you would have said selected.value, but that doesn't work. You would get the error if you hover, invalid type, right? Expects record, and you gave it text. Most common mistake. So if you use the choices, all you've got to do is drop down choice selected. That will get you that record with the pair value in red. All right, very simple. So using choices makes that one easy. Okay. Now, what if you instead had a multi-choice column? So multi-choice columns in SharePoint means I can select more than one favorite color, or I think in this case I used cities, right? So I could choose more than one city. So I'm going to use a combo box because one of the key differences between a drop-down and a combo box is a combo box will let you select multiple items. So with a combo box here, we are still going to use the same choices, complex column, and then the column name, right? My multi-choice column, this time different column. And that's where it got all of these, yay. If when you do that, you're not seeing what you want, just make sure over here under fields, you'd say edit, and then you want to be showing value, right? And that's the only thing that a choice column would have anyway. But so then that, what it's going to do, right? If we hit the play button here, and I go in and we can select Kansas City and Cincinnati, right? From the AFC Championship game that we lost. Oh well, we'll go over it. There you go. So those two are selected. If we hit the X, then what you can do is we go look at our patch statement, pull this down. So with a combo box, right, my multi-choice column, we've got combo box choices. That's what I named the control. And then instead of using .selected, you're going to use .selected items, right? And if you select this, you're going to see the reason for that is it returns a table of data. Hit the drop down. So there's a single column table. It has the column value, but then there's Kansas City and Cincinnati stored inside of it. So that's how that one works, right? So combo box, choices, selected items. If you only choose one item, it's still going to return it as a table because that choice column, the multi-choice column, it needs a table, right? If you only have one, it still has a table. Single choice needs a record. So that's why we're using different things with a choice column depending on the type of data structure you've chosen for it. Okay, next up, lookup columns. So lookup columns are actually going to function basically exactly the same, right? So a lookup column with a single selection is going to use a dropdown. You're going to do choices, complex column, my lookup column, same thing there. We can then go through here. We can choose one of these people. We'll choose Chewy. And so if we look at our patch, it is going to look exactly like a choice column. Right? My lookup column is dropdown lookup dot selected. That has a record. The record this time has a different shape, but the choices function handled that for you, right? Because choices return the table of data, and it said, oh, it's a lookup column, so there is a ID column and a value column. And so ID is 4, that's Chewy's ID from the list we're looking up from, and value is Chewy, which is the first name column, which is what we chose, right? But we didn't even have to understand any of that. By using a dropdown for lookup, and then using the choices function here, we don't have to overthink it. It just works, right? So I don't have one, but if we had a multi-select lookup, guess what would you do? It's just like a choices column. So you would go over here to the combo box. So you would have had a combo box, you would have used the same lookup here, and then you would have patched selected items, right? Once you see the pattern, it's not too bad, right? Single choices are records, so you use dropdowns. Multi-choice fields are lookups, so you use tables, right? And if we switch over to SharePoint again, I just want you to see over here that, right, so my choice column, so this one, right, there's the red, green, blue, and notice here that display choice using dropdown or radio button, both of those are single selects. If we go backwards and we go to the multi-choice, where's multi-choice right there? And so there's my cities, and notice here checkboxes and allow multiple selections. So just wanted to show you, like, that's how you're triggering it. The lookup column has the same thing. Can you do a multiple or not? People column has the same thing, multiple or not. And so single, record, multi, table. All right, so there's person. So like we just told you, right? Now with person fields, it is slightly different that you always have to use a combo box. The reason for that is because when we put in choices and then complex column, my person column, if we hit play and I hit the drop down, nothing shows up. So what you have to do is you have to make your combo box searchable. And so now if we searched for Chewy, right, this is searching against whatever groups or users this is set up to. And so then there's Chewy, and then now it'd be a multi-select. Now, notice here that I can't select multiple, right? So remember with your combo box, there is a field, select multiple, there it is. And so there it is false. And so in a single person field, you'd want to make sure select multiple is false. Multi-person column, same deal, choices, my multi-person column, right? We went over here to fields, we assigned what fields showed up. And then, but the difference with this one is select multiple is going to be true because we want to be able to go in here and search for Shane. There's me, and then search for, oh, hit the X, right? It's not the greatest UI or UX, whatever. So Nicola, right? So now we've selected multiple. If we go look at our patch statement, what do we got? Down here, we've got, right? So my person is combo box person selected, right? So combo boxes have a selected, it just returns the last record you selected. So there, and then my multi-person column, combo box persons and selected items, which is back to our table. You also could see here if you wanted to, right? Because we need to know this in a minute, but look at how much more complicated a person record is, right? It's got the claim, the department, the display name, the email, the job title, the picture, all of that is getting sent across. We didn't have to configure any of that, right? Choices pulled all that data in. SharePoint wants it back. Choices is providing it. This is why controls are so much easier when you're using complex columns. They do all the hard work. Managed metadata. This is one I've never actually had to use for a customer, so I had to learn this for this video. But basically, look at that. It's the same thing again. How much easier does this get? So choices, you just do complex column dot my managed metadata column. Look, it's returning the table of the label, the path, the term GUID, the value, the WSS ID. I don't know what any of that garbage is. Don't care. But those are the terms. And so then when I set up the dropdown, I just said, hey, make sure you just show them the label. So then there are my three terms, term 1, term 2, term 3. Very fancy names, I know. And so you can choose whichever one of those. And as you hopefully can guess by now, to patch those, what are you going to do? Drop down manage metadata dot selected, right? So the same control. That's it. Nothing else to it. But Shane, what if I had a multiple select manage metadata? You know the answer, right? You would use a combo box and then you do selected items, right? If you're one of those people that jump chapters straight to this, you're like, oh, I'm a little confused. You probably need to go watch choices first. Choices is really the detailed explanation. Once you get through choices, the rest of these follow the same pattern. So that's why we're able to jump so easy. So then we're going to have the my yes, no column. So SharePoint calls it yes, no. Technically it's a boolean, which means true or false. So when you patch it, you just need to patch true or false. And so in that case, what we're going to do is we could use a toggle, we could use a checkbox, we could hard code it, we'll learn that in a minute, it doesn't matter. But the toggle in this case, it produces the output of true or false. So if we look at our patch code here, then we got my yes, no, toggle, yes, no, dot value, right? So I'm just using a toggle control and then doing dot value, that is returning the boolean of false or true. It only just wants false or true, no big deal. The next one here is not the greatest answer, but my hyperlink columns. So in SharePoint, we have a hyperlink column. And so Alt-Tab, if you go back over here real quick, and we go click on this column. So when you create a hyperlink column, you can choose whether the format URL is hyperlink or picture. So if it is chosen as hyperlink, then you can patch the link, the URL. If you choose picture, it will not let you patch it. Also, if you're editing this directly in SharePoint, you can set a description text, like alternate text, I think is the other thing they call it. But that's like the words that go with the link. That cannot be patched. It cannot be referenced in Power Apps either. Like Power Apps just unaware of that field, quite frankly. So basically, you would just treat this one as a text where you're going to put a URL. So if we switch back over to Power Apps. So over here, you're going to see that input hyperlink is, I'm just using a text input. I've got the .text set and we're just setting the column, right? And so that would patch training.poweraapps911.com. That's it. There's nothing else to it. It doesn't do anything fancy. Okay, and then weirdly enough, the last one here, we're going to do an image column and I put it in the middle. I don't know why it's not in the right spot. Whatever, forgive me. But so my image column, all you have to do for that is you need to provide it an image. So that could be an image that you're adding with a media control. So, right, the insert and then media, add picture down here. So we could use that control, which is what we're going to use here. If you had a pin input, you could just send the pin input. If you just had a hard-coded image, we'll show you in a minute, you could send that, right? Basically, it just needs an image object, and using one of the image controls, or well, like we just listed, that's the way to do this, right? So with that in here, I can now just click on add a picture, and then there's my desktop, and then we might just go down here and find a picture of Chewie and his ears. And so, right, what we know that actually does is if we click on it, if we go look over here on the left, right, it just has an uploaded image control where it's currently showing the image. So uploaded image 1. And so if you look at my patch statement, all we're doing here is upload image1.image. And so then that's going to push that Chewy with the ears over to the data source. Okay. So that's how you patch all these columns, right? And if you look up at the top of my patch, I'm using defaults. That means create a new record. So let's just try it. We'll hit play. Let's just patch them all. Let's make this one true. What the heck? We'll hit patch. After a second, everything kind of blinked. And if I scroll down here, look at that. There's Chewy in his ears, item 20, and there's all the metadata that we just did. Yay, us! So patching controls, right? Patching with controls is pretty straightforward because all you have to do is know the right control to let the user get the input that you want. That's it, right? There's not a lot of challenges here. I mean, it's complicated. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not trivial. But once you kind of get the hang of it's basically, do I want a drop down or a choice from, or a drop down or a combo box for most of them? And then once I've got that in place, using the choices function shapes things for us. We're happy. All right. So that's patching your SharePoint complex columns using Power Apps, but by using controls. So now what we want to do is we want to switch gears and we want to patch all of these controls, but we want to use static values. That is much more difficult. So what we'll do is we'll switch over here. And so I have a different screen for that. We'll kind of collapse this one. We'll go to static value screen. And so, right, I just have one button and we're just going to hard code every single one of those fields. Now with this one, I gave you guys some notes in here, right? So I use code comments to kind of help. And also, if I didn't say it earlier, remember that you can go up to the link that's up above or below to the blog post and you can copy and paste this code, right? So I wrote a blog post on Power Apps 911 that has this code where you guys can just copy it straight up. So I thought that'd be very helpful with me, right? Or you can subscribe to the training library and then you can download the whole app. So to that end, you know, patching title is just text, doesn't care. So pretty straightforward. The text column, just text, straightforward. If you're using multi-line of text, it'd be the same thing, right? There's no difference there. For a number column, it just wants a number, right? Same thing for a currency. The difference here, remember, is that when you're using a number, it's just a number. So it just says 32. It doesn't say 32 in quotes because that would be the text 32, not the number 32. Let's get that right. Date time column, it just wants a date. You could use a today function, the now function. You can use a date value function, the date time value function. It doesn't matter. It just wants a date time object sent over to it. Okay, so now my choice column. So we've learned how these all work, right? We understand we now have to worry about records versus tables. So now we need to craft those. So if I wanted to patch the choice column as blue, we're going to use curly brackets, right? In Power Apps and in JSON, right? It's a record. And so here it's going to say value : blue. Shane, how did you know it was value? Remember earlier when we highlighted the dropdown dot selected and it said, hey, I've got a record, and it showed us the record was value in blue. So that's how I knew what columns it wanted. So that's where we're able to just say value blue. So I could change this to green, yellow, pink, purple. It doesn't matter because SharePoint's pretty forgiving. It's just going to let me patch that text as long as it's in that record form. So that's how you'd patch a choice column with a static value. A multi-choice column is a little harder, not much, but a little harder. If you understand how to patch this, you understand how to make this record, then what you need to do is you need to make a table if you wanted to patch multiple choices. So if I want to patch my multi-choice column, that's not right, right? So we'll do this with London and Paris, right? Because I used cities last time, so we just do London and then Paris, like that. So it is that same record format. So curly bracket value : London, curly bracket value Paris. There is a comma between each record, and then they're just wrapped in a table function, right? So that right there is what it wants. It wants a table, and we're just hard coding the table to have a column for value with London, and then another record with value and Paris. Okay, so that's how you would hard code those two. Hard coding a lookup column, same concept, but different fields, right? So this time it's a record, but because remember when we looked at the lookup after choices, we were able to see that it had multiple things, right? And it wanted ID value Nicola, or sorry, one ID. So that's the ID of her record from the list we're looking up. So it's the employees list. And so her record is number 1 and the value is Nicola. If you wanted me, I think I am number, I don't remember what I am in that list, but I could go and find it, right? Let's just go find it. So let's go to SharePoint. And if I went to employees here, because this is where we're looking up from, and so look, I am 3. So my ID is 3 and my first name is Shane. So over there, if I wanted to patch it, let's switch back. Over here, then we would just put in ID 3, and then for the value, we would change this to Shane, right? So that's what that would look like. So when you're patching lookup columns, there you go. And once again, if you're confused by this, the other way to cheat, remember, go back over here, right? Where did we do? We patched it, right? We were able to patch it earlier with our with our control. So if we highlight this, drop down selected, look, record, and then look, ID 4, value Chewy. So this is showing me what the shape of that record needs to look like. The data's there, so Power Apps tell you what to do. Okay, so that's a lookup. And so if you're going to patch multi-lookup, what would you do? You'd wrap these records in table. Whether it's 1 record, 2 record, or 100 records, you'd wrap it in a table function. Bingo, bango, you would have that together. Now, a person field, same concept, same exact thing, right? It just wants a record. The difference here is that a person column has all of these fields, right? So the record has a display name, claims, department, email, job title, and picture. The good news is that to hard code it, all you have to do is send the claim. So you're just going to send Chewy at powerapps911.com to hard code Chewy in the person field. And then SharePoint will find all these other values and will look them up for you. Okay? So that is how you're going to do this one. Don't overthink this one. It is annoying. And you're like, Shane, how would I ever remember if that was name or display name? So another one of my tricks, let's delete this out for a second. So if we don't have display name, it's angry, right? If you hover, it's going to tell you, expecting a record value, but of a different schema. Missing column. See the second line? Missing column. Your formula is missing a column, display name with type of text. Oh, so I could come here and I'd say display name, nope, colon, boom, boom for text, and throw a comma in there. And then it's yelling at me because I misspelled display. So display has an A right there. Spelling is not my strong suit. Oh, and then the name, it has to be capitalized the same. So now that I made it exactly what it wants, it is back to happy. So, right, truth be told, I don't have all these memorized. I just put a record field in there, and then it yells at me what field it's missing, and then I kind of have to remember, does that field need to be populated or not? Person fields, no. It's just a claim. Okay? And then also go the same thing, like, well, Shane, what if I wanted to hard code this to be the logged in user right now? Cool, right? What would you do? User.email. That gets the text. It wants text. Doesn't care. So now the logged in user would be automatically set to that person column, right? So none of these fields you have to be all the way static. You can have them a mixture of static and function-based or even control-based. We're just trying to expose you to what it wants. Multi-person. You should know the answer now, right? What is it? It's that same record. So curly bracket with a comma between the records, and it's just inside the table function, right? Once you get the pattern, they're all the same, right? So in case of multi-select, it's always a table. Table means a table function with just 1 or more records in here, right? Because we don't have to have multiple. I could just delete this one out, Control X. Or if I wanted to have it in there and I want a third one, right, we could just paste it in and then change this to be, oh, I got one too many commas. Change this to be Jennifer. And what did I do wrong? Oh, too many commas up here. There you go. And so now it's patching 3, right? No big deal. You can have it patch as many or as few as you want. And we could even go back to this idea that, and we want this first one to then just be the logged in user. All right? You can mix and match. It's okay. Power Apps just wants what it wants. It doesn't care how you get there. Okay? Next up, we've got the image column. Now for the image column, same type of deal. You need to pass an image. So if I was trying to pass a static image to everyone's, I would just put an image control on the screen, right? So in this case, I have image 2 over here, and then I would just pass in the image2.image. Now what's really cool about this one is I used a concept for this one. It's an old one, right? So this is using my Google Maps API key. Don't steal it if I forget to blur it out, but it's using my Google Maps API key to get a static image based on those coordinates, right? And there's a link to the video. I made that one back in maybe 2018. That was a really old video. But it doesn't matter, right? Because now everyone would get this image. So maybe you have then the latitude and longitude up here set to the location function. So you're getting the current user's location, latitude, and longitude in the map control, and then you are hard coding that in here. And so then we're just saving that to the image column. Not too bad, right? Not too bad at all. So images, not that hard anymore. It was really hard in the beginning, but they fixed it, made it better. So if you want to patch a My Managed Metadata column, same thing. It wants a record again, folks. Who knew? This one needs two things, though. The label is required, so that's the word you were seeing in the dropdown, term 1, term 2, or term 3. And then I need the behind-the-scenes term GUID, right? So if you were going to hard code them all to have term 1, you just have to go find its GUID and then put it here, right? So you can't just arbitrarily do that. You're going to have to know its GUID. So looking that up ahead of time could be challenging, but once you know it, you plug those two in and it works. If you're doing multi-choice metadata, what would you do? Put a table function around it, put these two in there, you'd be great. My yes, no column, right? It doesn't want yes or no, it wants true or false. So my yes, no column, colon true, not in quotes, nothing, right? Just true, right? That's just the boolean of true. There you go. That would set it to yes. If you set it to false, it would set it to no. And then last but not least, my hyperlink column. Remember the rules around this one. You can only patch it if it's a hyperlink column type, and it just wants the text URL. So training.powerapps911.com. Great website if you've never been. And there is no way to set the description or the alternate text. Sorry. And if you set it to a picture column type, then there's no way to patch it, period. Whew. That's a lot of columns, folks, right? But there you go. That is my video, my cheat sheet, here is everything you ever wanted to know about all these different columns. Hopefully that helps you learn how to patch all of them, because the more that you work with SharePoint, the more likely you are to encounter one of these columns, the more likely you are to have to patch them, the more likely you are to have to deal with it. You get the story, right? So thoughts, questions, comments, what you got? Leave them below. Was this helpful? Do I need to do more here? Like, do I need to talk about getting it out of there? I don't think so, right? You would just jump in the gallery. So for example, here's the multi-people, right? And so in the case of multi-people, because it's a table, you use concat. Single select, it's just my person column dot display name. So, but if we need a video on that, holler, I can definitely do that. It's a pretty straightforward video. Or if you got other columns that I miss a column type, you're like, Shane, why didn't you cover blah, blah, blah? Oops, my bad. Let me know and we'll get that in there. All right. And with that, I'm going to say thanks and have a great day. Hey, me again. Before you go, click on the subscribe button, right? Join the list of 100,000 plus people that have subscribed already. Or if you need any help, right? Check us out at Power Apps 911. We do big projects, little projects. We do training. We do everything, and we can help you. Or if you want to see more videos, you probably do, then just click on the playlist above. Cool? Thanks, and have a great day.